Last section. Let's go. Yeah. So a little more about monkeypox disease. So shown here are the results from several animal trials. These are all animal trials where a lethal outcome is expected. So you get an animal that's susceptible, you give them enough virus that the animal should die ordinarily and would die if you don't treat. And then you treat and see if you can actually bring the animal back. This is like a way of checking. It's like we're helping slow down the virus, but are we helping in a way that actually keeps the organism alive, which is really what you want from an antiviral? And so, yeah, here are some of the tests. So, several different pox viruses, looking great. And you can see here the treatment day was either day 2, day 3, or in one case, day 4. And they got great survival. Now, the problem in humans is that, well, the problem for us is that there weren't any cases. So, in several of these studies, they actually tried treating later. And when you try treating later, you find that there's less of an effect. And then eventually you find that there's no effect. So, here, if you give a placebo, this is the percent survival, and it goes down to nothing in about 10 days. So, yeah, all the animals would die. These macaque monkeys, cynomolgus monkeys. If you treat early, that's the blue line, day 4, you can keep almost all of them alive. Great news. If you treat later, in this case, day 6, then day 5, you actually keep most of them alive still. Day 6, you're losing about half of them. So the effectiveness of this really starts to drop off after a couple of days. There's a narrow window. And the problem is that it takes 3 to 17 days for a rash to develop in a human. So if our window is, it works out to 4 days or maybe 5 days, and you're not even going to have a fever or a rash until about that time, and then you have to somehow, despite all the other stuff you're trying to do, get a doctor's appointment, get them to recognize what it is, run the tests like right there, which most don't do, and then get you prescribed tecovirimat. Very hard to do in the period in which it would actually work, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's a really cool drug that could work if it was given quick enough, and it's very hard to give it quick enough for it to actually work, which kind of lousy, right? Yeah, it's not what you want. Okay, so what's all this stuff about monkeypox in pregnancy, or pox viruses in general in pregnancy? And I think that is an interesting topic. Yeah. And so this actually comes from some work that my wife participated in. That's her up there, Benning N. Yeah. Yeah, she's the lead author on this. So yeah, whatever. Ask her anything. Don't harass her. What they were doing is they were testing mice, and this was with vaccinia virus, which does essentially the same things that monkeypox virus would do in infected animals. And these mice are susceptible, so you can give them this and they get bad disease. Whereas in people, if you give them vaccinia in the arm, usually there's no disease or such a mild disease that it's fine, and then they have lifelong immunity at the end of it. Well, in these mice, what they noticed is that you get a lot of virus in the spleen, fair amount in the liver, but look at that. The uterus and the ovaries in these pregnant female mice were very, very hot spots for infection. And then as time goes on and they eventually survive the infection, you notice that the virus is cleared from almost everywhere except the uterus and ovaries. And look, 2 weeks after infection, look at the only tissue where you still get the virus, ovaries. Now, the other thing they found in there is that if there's a placenta, if the mama mouse is actually pregnant, you get even more virus there, and it lasts even longer, and it has terrible effects on the pups. Essentially, they're always stillborn. Yeah, they don't make it. They don't ever make it. There are human cases of monkeypox. Right now, we have 5. The 5th one coming in 2022, and in the future, I guess we'll probably have more, which is terrible. Here are the first 4 cases that we know about. If you look down here, the bottom line is that you end up with 3 dead babies, 2 miscarriages early on, one where the fetus dies but is covered in poxvirus lesions, and so the fetus was infected, and one that was a live birth that, was okay, and thank goodness, that was okay. But that was in the patient with the mildest, the mother had the mildest version of the virus out of all these and had the lowest amount of circulating virus at maximum. So, yeah. The 5th case was in the U.S. I believe it was down by Houston. And this was a mother who was infected basically just before she gave birth. And so she delivered the baby while still infected, and the baby was actually okay, because it takes a while for the virus to work its way down into the uterus, to find the placenta, to start to grow in the placenta. And the virus is just after essentially stem cells, rapidly replicating cells that have lots of components that could be made into new viruses. That's what the virus is after. And so it does that. And the consequence is that it destroys the baby. And this is another one of those cases where, because you have so much virus potentially growing in the placenta, actually in the baby itself, the baby usually doesn't make it, almost never. And there's a pretty good potential that if you are able to remove the baby that's not going to make it, then this would probably be a case where it would have a positive impact on the mother's survival, which is frankly a terrible choice to be left with. Just, you're picking among very bad options, but yeah, good to have those options anyway, wherever and whenever you do. All right, thank you. That's the end of pox viruses. Hope you got something useful out of it. Bye-bye.